This is how it happened. This is how the Batman died.
In 30 frames per second. By the way, is that Mike from Breaking Bad? So, my name is NJ Overclocked, and this is Batman Arkham Knight on PC, and let me get a few things out of the way before I get started. I'm using an i7-4790K and a GTX 970 to run this game. I'd like to also say, because it's true, that this is a really good game with a very good storyline, as you'd expect from Rocksteady. The reason I'm doing this now is because I wanted to give them a day or so to release drivers to improve performance, and NVIDIA did release one driver, and alas, it did not make much of a difference in performance for me. It did improve SLI performance slightly, but for the average PC gamer, you're still paying $60 to watch a Batman slideshow. So in case the Steam reviews weren't enough to convince you of the current state of this game, let's take a look at the options menu. Starting with graphics, VSync on or off, very basic, no dynamic VSync options, anti-aliasing, again, they're on or off. Texture resolution, low or normal. I mean, come on, it's just insulting. Both shadows and level of detail, normal or high, and then you got a bunch of NVIDIA settings that will just destroy your frames per second and all-around playability. Don't even turn them on. Moving on to audio, sound effects, music, and dialogue all have their own individual sliders, speakers, bunch of different speaker settings. This is something the game did do right, and I have to give them a lot of points for their audio. The audio in the game and the voice acting is very, very good. Now we're moving on to what is, in my opinion, the worst part of the options menu in this game, the controls. The controls are an absolute mess. Spacebar is bound to run, evade, climb, glide, and interact. So you feel like you're playing Spacebar Simulator 2015. And it's not a matter of rebinding keys, because no matter what you bind it to, it still does all of those different things. For instance, I like to press shift to run in PC games and space to jump. You can't even do that in this game, and it takes a lot away from the immersion. The basic controls are so ridiculously oversimplified, but the combat combos are convoluted and ridiculous. I don't know who they were marketing this to. But let's just assume that we can get used to that, and it's not such a big deal. What you're seeing now on the screen is my actual first time in the game, and the reason I'm jumping around the options menu so much is because I'm looking for a sensitivity slider. Spoilers, there isn't one. That's right, you heard correctly. There isn't a sensitivity slider, and the sensitivity is set default to 30, which is really high, and you cannot change it. Mouse smoothing is also turned on by default, and you can't take that off either. That is without going into the INI file or the game file in your Steam folder. So in the spirit of not boring you to death, I'm going to speed up the next 5 minutes of me searching in bewilderment. Wait, are we done? Yeah, we're done. Sorry, I love that song. But anyway, the intro to the game is really cool and sets the tone for the story well, and also contains what I can only assume is a nod to the Dark Knight film. Let's get on to the gameplay. In addition to sound design, the artwork in this game is also really good, and thumbs up for Rocksteady getting rid of bat nipples. Hold on, this sensitivity is all wrong. This is me moving my mouse like half an inch. Are you sure there's no slider? Yeah, there really isn't. All the gameplay I'm showing you now is 100% real time, and if you see any skips and frame drops, that is not your video buffering, that is actually what it looks like. And it happens way too often. You get frame drops from 30 down to 16 or less, and it's just sometimes unplayable. And that is with all the NVIDIA settings turned off. Now let's talk about the 30 frame rate cap. You can change it with the game folder INI file, but you really shouldn't have to. I play Battlefield 4 at Ultra, completely maxed out settings in 130, 144 frames per second on a 144 Hz monitor. If my PC can run that smoothly at 120 plus Hz, then there's no reason it shouldn't be able to run this smoothly. This is not a question of crazy graphics here. This is just a case of very poor optimization. This feels very lazily done, like it was just made for console, thrown onto PC, and then released. And I'm sure that AMD and Nvidia will keep putting out drivers and trying to improve performance, but there's only so much they can do. Rocksteady needs to get on top of this as soon as possible and fix it, because if you look at Steam, this game's taking a well-deserved hit in the way of PC sales and reviews. It kinda seems like they made it for console and just put out a PC port on day one to sell more copies, and that's not a good practice. But it's pretty obvious considering the 30 frame per second cap. But just look at games like Grand Theft Auto and Gears of War, games that came out for console and then actually took the time to make the PC port really feel like a PC game, adding in extra features, allowing modding, and all-around good optimization. I don't know about you, but I've always loved Rocksteady and their Batman games. The others had good PC ports, and I'd hate to see this one go the way of Watch Dogs. Granted, it kind of already has, but I think in this case it's still very early on and there's time to fix it, so please, Rocksteady, fix it. And as for you guys, I'd urge you not to buy it in its current state. Do the industry a favor and be patient, because from now on if somebody asks me why I don't pre-order games, my answer will simply be Batman Arkham Knight. But I'm not writing off this game completely just yet. I have faith in Rocksteady and their ability to fix it, and after all, they are losing money. And as we've seen, nothing motivates a game company more than money. For example, the people who got this game for free with Nvidia graphics cards are no longer getting the Harley Quinn pack included, they now have to buy it. Which I don't recommend you do, because even that feels like it was just thrown together and slapped onto the game as a DLC pre-order incentive with not much thought or effort put into it. I mean, bringing Harley into the game post-Joker doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the first place. And I know this problem isn't specific to Batman Arkham Knight, but it's still worth mentioning. This DLC pre-ordering trend is worrying, to say the least, and ultimately hurting consumers who are patient enough not to pay full price for a game they haven't even seen yet. Anyway, I'm now going to leave you with some Batmobile footage so you can see just how badly optimized this really is.
It's too dangerous. Sir, we're right here. We can take these bastards. What the? They just fired an RPG at us. Who the hell are these guys? 5-6, pull back now. That's an order. Let Batman deal with this.
It was around this point that I started to feel carsick. Another thing that confused me about this game is that it actually has a benchmark test that you can see here. Why, if the game's capped at 30 frames per second, is there a benchmark test? It's almost like they're saying, here, look at all these frames per second you could be getting. But anyway, that about wraps up everything I've got to say about this game at this point. If it does get fixed, I'll do an update video and let you know how that goes and how it runs. But until then, if you are a PC gamer, I'd say save your money and wait. My name is NJ Overclocked, and
this is your only warning.
thank you so much for watching. I love that song.
Where's the trigger? Where is it? You never give it to an ordinary citizen. Where is it? Where's the trigger?